Hello, I'm Evelyn Hayes, and I came to Runcorn the first time in 1944, and he wasn't my husband then, but the young man, soldier that I'd met down in the south, took me on the transporter. I could cope with London bombs and things, but that transporter scared the living daylights out of me. I was terrified of sitting inside that cabin and the whole thing falling down, because it was in the January and there was ice on the rails, and it cracked and it banged and it stopped and it started and it swung about in the breeze. So in actual fact, after we'd been to the pictures, I insisted we walked back over the old bridge and I didn't go on that transporter again for at least another 4 years, which in 1948 I came and lived in Runcorn, saying I wouldn't stay here, but now 60 odd years later I am still here. Because I come from the suburbs of London, which was all new houses and wide roads, it was quite a shock, because Runcorn was a little black town then with a lot of chemicals around it. But the thing that fascinated me, because the part of Essex I came from, we had no canals, and so the canal in Runcorn absolutely fascinated me, and I spent many times when I'd gone over Savage's Bridge, I'd walk along to Top Locks and watch the canals, because at the weekend the canal boats used to come in and all park up there in front of the what used to be the Waterloo, and you'd see the youngsters with the buckets dipping them over the side and getting this coal out of the bottom of the canal. And there was one old lady that you always saw in all her black gear and smoking a clay pipe. She was quite a character. But do you know, their shopping bags were always, they had a shopping basket and the cover on them was a pristine white, and you wondered how on earth they managed. And when later years we actually did a book on the canals, and we went in some of the canal boats in the museum at Ellesmere Port, you could not believe how you could live with a family and cook in that tiny space. It was just unbelievable. But I also met some very interesting people who told me about their lives on the boats. One of the ladies, she nearly drowned because she fell off, because oddly enough, very few of them could swim. You know, it's a bit like sailors saying that they can't swim. You think, but why go to sea if you can't swim? And she nearly drowned, and in fact she told me that one of her siblings was born. I mean, the doctors used to go down, and the mothers, they're giving birth in that little tiny cramped area, but you know, they had a bit like gypsies. They had a society that was their own, and they all knew almost every canal boat, because as the youngsters got older they had to go and work on another boat. It was as if the whole of the canal was family, and if they had a christening or anything, they all gathered together for it and dressed their boats up. And they told us some amazing stories, and it was just fascinating. You just can't imagine how. I mean, the hours they had to work was appalling. You know, it really was, because they worked from morning till night, and that included the mothers and And one of the things about the children was, because they had trying to get them into education, which is a very good thing, and also they were only supposed to have so many young children sleeping on each boat. Some of them had a secondary boat, I forget what you call them now, but and they all knew immediately that there was one of these inspectors were on it. So the children would be on the bank and down. Do you live on this boat? No, sir, no. Now our boat's down the, few miles away. And this happened with all of them, because they were all actually overcrowded, but they never caught them out. And of course at school, which again is something you can't envision, is that they'd be in school in the middle of the lesson and one from the family would come, we're sailing, and so they'd leave school. That was it. And they had to get their school book signed by a teacher that they had been in school. Quite a few of the perhaps more prudent, shall we say, had actually got a house on the banks of the river, and the families seemed to share them. So quite often when mother was expecting a baby, she would go and stay in one of these houses for a couple of weeks while the baby was being born. And also the person I'm trying to think, I think her name was Lillian, her husband, his family moved him onto board one of these houses, so they got his education. So he could actually read and write. His wife couldn't because she had no education whatsoever, but he did. But once he was 14, he had to come back and work on the boats, work on one of the boats. They had the most amazing lives, and it was wonderful talking to them. They really were. It's and of course
they struggle for money.
Oh yes, they were very poorly paid. I mean, that was it. They worked from morning till night because they only paid by the load. So that is where they got. If they pick up a load at somewhere down the line, and then they take it, bring it up to Runcorn. They pick it up at maybe Preston Brook, bring it through and have to take it down to Runcorn Docks. But until they got that unloaded, they didn't get paid. So then they had to get another load to take them back to go down to the potteries, because that was the main area that they was being. A lot did the coal runs, which was why the canal was originated, dug for, was to get the coal from Worsley to the Liverpool docks. But one of the major things was actually using the canal to get down to the potteries and bringing the pots up. They all had beautiful pottery in their canal boats, I might say. Beautiful china, yeah. But it was arduous, and the women worked as hard as the men,
No pensions.
Often harder. No pensions, no money, And they'd spring clean about once a year because obviously the things were lousy because of the things that they were carrying. So
did they own the boats, or did they just hire the boats usually?
Some had been in the families and owned for a long time, so they'd pass them down from family to family. But some were actually owned by a small company, and they worked for that company. And they did get paid. I think their payment was more regular if they were able to work for a company that would keep them in work. But then they had to, as I say, deliver, pick up, go, and there was no such thing as holidays.